Stepping onto your mat towards the back edge, come into child pose where we left off in the last practice in round 1. So bringing yourself down onto your shins, press your hips back over your heels. Use your hands in front to help you take your hips back so your butt cheeks come towards your heels. If you feel top heavy or your hips are high or tight, then you might feel more comfortable taking your knees wider. You might also want to rest your head on your hands, or if you have a block or pillow handy. So letting go of the weight of your head. And for another breath or so, using your hands in front to help you tuck yourself in small. So as you exhale, push the ground away with your hands. Feel how that lengthens your low back, drops your butt cheeks back over your heels. And then see if you can breathe into your belly, into your low back, and feel a little bit more space opening there. When you find where you're tucked in small and yet you're breathing fully, breathing in and out through your nose as best you can, then wrap your hands back around by your feet or rest them under your head if they're not already there, and settle into this like you're a small rock resting on the ground. Listen to your breathing and use your next inhale to uncurl. Let the breath help you uncurl. And as you're coming upright onto your shins into a kneeling posture, take your arms up overhead, stretching them out to the sides, up towards center, and then draw your hands together and down along the midline of your body, bringing them into Atmanjali Mudra, prayer position, at your sternum, at your heart center. If you need to readjust your seat, feel free to do that so you can sit for just another moment while we tune in. And again, feel free to listen, take in the meaning of the mantra. So if that's your level, listen, absorb the meaning. If you're joining in with your voice, breathe in for the first of 3. Om Namo Gurudev Namo. As you breathe in, take your hands out in front, shift your weight forward, come onto hands and knees. Come into table pose, where you have your hips over your knees and your shoulders over your hands. And then as you press the floor away with your palms, press the floor away with your shins and your feet as well, and arch into cat pose. So you're taking your back up towards the sky. Pause here for a breath or so, let your head drop down. Look to see the alignment in your legs, that your knees are under your front hips, about a fist width apart, and that you can't see your feet behind your knees. So you get a sense of toes, ankles, knees, front hips lined up. And then take another breath or so here and see if you can pull your belly into your low back and still breathe fully, but feel how that engagement of your low abdominal muscles opens your low back. Following your breath, use your next inhale to roll into cow pose. So lift your tailbone, let your pelvis tilt forward towards the floor, your belly open, your ribs open. And when you get to the point of your head lifting, pause here in cow pose for a few breaths and check that you can slide your shoulders back away from your neck. So if you're not able to do that, shift your hands back or a little bit wider and take a few breaths feeling the weight of your rib cage drop down. And the next time that you exhale, roll back into cat pose, starting from your tailbone, roll all the way up to your head. Push the ground away with the front of your feet, your ankles, your shins, the base of your fingers. And then as you inhale, roll from your tailbone up to your head again into cow pose. When you get to that full part of the inhale, check that your shoulders aren't strangling your neck. Draw them back. And continue for a few more breaths at your pace of breathing. In today's practice, we're going to learn A little bit more about breathing. So being conscious of your breath. This next time that you exhale, arch your back up to the sky in cat pose and keep breathing as you curl your toes under and shift your weight back onto your feet. Find your feet in a good, comfortable stance underneath you and then slowly uncurl up to standing. Breathing as you come upright so you don't get lightheaded. Keep a little bend in your knees, especially if you have a tendency to get lightheaded, and let your head come up last. Keep breathing as you lift your head at the top. Inhale, lift your shoulders up, roll them back. Taking some shoulder shrugs here. A few more circles with your shoulders. Inhale, lift them up towards your ears, and exhale, roll them down and back. Breathing your shoulders up and forward, and then down and back as you exhale. Then as you release your shoulders down, look down and check out your feet underneath you. Bring them parallel to each other, so your second toes are pointing straight ahead. This may be a little odd if you haven't done this kind of standing before. You may feel like you're pigeon-toed. Most of us tend to stand with our feet in a V shape or 1 foot out wider. So look down and see that your feet are parallel and find where they're under your hips comfortably. Then bend your knees and look down and see that you can see your big toes inside your kneecaps. So if you can't see that, if your knees have rolled inwards, you may have to take your feet closer to each other so that when you bend your knees, they naturally go out over the middle of the toes, and your big toes are visible between your kneecaps. Because we're not going to focus on the knees and the legs, so we want to make sure they're safe. Once you find that, lengthen up through your legs again. Bring one hand onto your belly. We're going to learn a different breathing. This is a bit of a dynamic breath. So with the first sniff of 3 sniffs, think of breathing into your hand on your belly, the second one into the ribs, and the third one up into the upper chest. Then when we exhale with the sound ha, draw your belly back away from your hand towards your spine. See if you can feel that. If you don't find it, that's fine, but use your hand there to gauge. Starting with the breath in 3 sniffs. Ha! 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 Keep going. See if you can feel that you're filling in 3 parts and then emptying with that strong sound. So the advantage of making that sound, drawing the belly back, is that you empty the lungs fully, and then you have room to take more breath in. Then releasing out with this last one. Release your arms down by your sides. With this first sniff, bring your arms up in front. Then second sniff, arms out to the sides. Third sniff, arms all the way up overhead. Then fold over when you ha. Keeping your knees bent with each movement. Inhale up in front, inhale to the sides, inhale overhead, exhale fold. Inhale front, inhale sides, overhead, fold. Front, sides, overhead, fold. Good, keep going. Feeling the whole body involved as though you're pulsing the breath out of the ground and up through the body. I tend to think of a little bird trying to get out of the nest. If you have trouble with the coordination, just keep flapping. Keep the arms moving, keep the breath going. Breathing in 3 sniffs, out in 1 strong sound. Ha! In these last few ones, if you haven't already automatically added in the quality of joy, add that into this practice. This is called breath of joy, so let it be light. If you're not feeling joyful, just fake it. Let your face lighten. Just a couple more. Last one. As you come up, lift your arms up overhead. Inhale, then take them back behind you and exhale through your mouth. Because you've moved your heart and your body a little bit, you may need to go quickly with the breath so you get the breath you need. Inhale through your nose as you lift your arms in front. Exhale through your mouth as you take your arms back behind you. And listen to the sound of the breath. On the inhale, as it comes through the nose, see if you can hear a steady quality of the sound. And on the exhale, the same, as it goes out through the mouth. Finding the pace that you need so that you're getting the oxygen that you need. And as soon as you find that pace, then breath by breath, start to slow it down. See if you can take more time to inhale and to exhale. In these last few breaths, see if you can play with exhaling through the nose as well as inhaling through the nose, but keeping that sound that you are making in your mouth. So you're basically just closing your mouth and continuing the same sound that you were making when you had your mouth open. You're closing your lips around the sound. Trying that initially on the exhale, and if it feels like you have a sense of it, sounds a little bit like Darth Vader, like the sound of the ocean in a shell. When you find it on the exhale, you can then play with adding it into the inhale. As you release your arms down this next time, just pause for a moment, letting your arms hang. If you feel balanced, you might try closing your eyes. See if you can keep that breath going, even without circling your arms. And notice, if you can remember what you felt like a moment ago with breath of joy, the quality of that breath versus the quality of this breath, which is an ocean-sounding breath. So you might find that you feel a little bit calmer, a little bit more balanced. Make your hands into fists, and keeping your feet square under your hips so you feel balanced in your stance, draw one fist up your side body and ha! As you bring your fist towards your underarm, and then over to the other side. Ha! On each side. Ha! 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 Let the inhale happen. Don't even think about the inhale. If you empty out fully on the exhale, the breath will come in. It's the sense of zipping up your side body, opening up your side waist and your ribs, all the muscles for breathing that get tight like any other muscles. One more on each side. As you come back to center, relax your hands. Come back into an easier breath. Bring your attention down to your feet, noticing where they are. If they're not already about a fist width apart, front hip width apart, roughly. Everybody's body is different. With the middle of your feet, your middle toes pointing straight ahead, so the midlines of your feet are parallel to each other. Then make those adjustments. And then lift all of your 10 toes up, feeling the balls of your feet a little more strongly placed on the ground, the arches a little more lifted. Then continue that lift that you have in the toes and the arches up through the front of the thighs, drawing your kneecaps up, not locking, but also not bending. Bring one hand to your belly and one hand to your low back. Use your hands there as you draw your belly in and up slightly to feel how your low back is more stabilized, has a little more space in it, more support in it, but not so much that you've tucked your tail between your legs. Then see if you can keep that engagement of your low belly, your abdominal muscles, and still breathe steadily. If you're able to find that ocean-sounding breath from the little bit that we've done, great. If not, just breathe in and out through your nose and notice the quality of the sound. Keeping that awareness in your core, bring your arms down by your sides, palms facing the sides of your thighs, and stretch your fingers down towards the ground, feeling how that drops your shoulders onto your back. Even though your shoulders are dropping down, keep the lift up from your feet, through your legs, through your core. Listen to your breath. And on your next inhale, lift your arms up. Let them float up in front and overhead. And as they come into contact with any tension in the shoulders, notice if your ribs stick out in front or your tail sticks out in back. If that happens, then bring your arms out a little bit wider so they come into more of a V shape. So if it doesn't work for your shoulders to bring your arms parallel, take them wider so that you can then slide your shoulders down onto your back. Feel the integration of your shoulder blades to your back instead of to your neck. And at the same time, lengthen up through your elbows and through your fingers, turning your palms to face each other, and feeling from your feet all the way up to your fingertips, 2 long, fairly parallel lines from the outer edges of your feet, through your legs, through your side body, all the way up through your arms to your fingertips. As you continue to hold this extended mountain pose, don't hold your breath. Visualize, imagine that you're breathing from the ground up as though you're inhaling and suctioning the breath up out of the ground, drawing the toes, the arches up. Imagine the muscles of the legs drawn in towards the bones to lift the bones of your legs up, so it feels like there's more space in your joints, ankles, knees, hips. And as you pull the breath up, imaginatively reiterate that lift in the low belly so that you have space along the low spine. And as you exhale, visualize that the breath extends out through your arms, through all of your fingers and thumbs, right out through the top of your head. So if you can visualize a few more long, deep breaths, and at this stage, shifting into, if you can, that ocean-sounding breath. If you're not finding it, just notice what's the quality of the sound. Are you hearing it in your nose? Can you play with starting to narrow your throat a bit to create that ocean sound? So you're still breathing through your nose in and out, but hearing the sound of the breath in the throat. So the advantage of this breath is that you can hear it. And when you can hear your breath, then you know you're breathing, and you know when you're not breathing. So as we move through the practices over the weeks, if you get into a posture and you realize all of a sudden that you're not breathing, it probably means you need to adjust the posture so you can inhabit it. You can be in there with your breath. Another advantage of this breath is that it slows you down. By narrowing the throat, it takes longer to breathe in and out, so you slow the heart, slow the mind into the moment. This is the most intense part of today's practice, so if you're feeling your arms, you're in a good place. Breathe into that. See if you can breathe all the way up into your shoulders, into your arms, as though the inhale can contact that sensation, bring you into connection with it. And then the exhale, you can let go of any struggle around it, any intensity. So if you're clenching your jaw or lifting your shoulders, let that go. This next time that you exhale, turn your palms to face out and imagine you're in honey or mud or something heavier than air, so that as you take your arms out to the sides, they move very slowly, letting the breath flow so you're not holding the breath. Let your toes release for a moment. Let your toes release down. And notice any sensations as your arms come down in your shoulders, in your arms. You might feel a little tingling in your hands. We have a tendency in our world to label things pain without actually inquiring. So if you're feeling sensation in your shoulders or your arms, see if you can identify it, describe it to yourself, without blanket naming it pain. And the clear distinction that's important for you to start to make in your own body is the difference between destructive sensation and constructive sensation. So something that builds but creates some heat or some intensity versus something that breaks down. So tuning in and finding out where that edge, that line, lies for you, and keeping in mind it will constantly shift. So use your breath to bridge your mind to your body. If your eyes are closed, open your eyes. Lift your 10 toes up off the ground again, finding that same sense of lift radiating up through your ankles and your thighs, right up into your belly, lifting up to support the low back. Bring your right hand to your right thigh, a little bit lower than your hip, with your fingers forward and your elbow back like you have a gun in your holster. And then lift your left arm up like we just did for that extended mountain pose. And as you bring your arm up, turn your palm to face your head and slide your shoulders down onto your back. If that's difficult to do, take your arm a little wider from your head so that your shoulder can reintegrate to your back. Then use your right hand on your outer thigh to press your hips over to the left. As you take your hips out of line with your feet, notice what happens in your feet. Feel if the toes drop, or if particularly the right arch drops. So keeping both arches lifted up and your front hips facing forward. So if you're not sure, look down and see your front hips, not the outer hips, but the front hip bones, like headlights facing off the front edge of the mat, so you're not twisting. And then to support your low back so you're not sinking, draw your belly up. Use your hand on your outer thigh to arch out through the left waist, the left ribs. And find how to hold that curve through the low torso with your breath supporting it and with your core muscles, your belly, your waist, and your low back. Now taking your supporting right hand off your thigh and bring it up to join your left hand. Interlace your fingers and draw that left arm a little longer so you're bringing that stretch into the left ribs and shoulder. Reach your head, top of your head, towards your hands so you don't lose your chin onto your chest. And feel or see, look down, and know that your underarms and your front hips are still facing right out over your feet, over the front edge of the mat. So you haven't twisted. Be sure that you can breathe. If you can't breathe, so this is what I was just talking about. If you can't breathe, edge back. Adjust your posture so that you can inhabit it fully with your breath. Use your next inhale to come up from your feet, through your legs, through your torso, back up to center. And as you exhale, separate your hands, bring your shoulders down onto your back if they crept up. Pause for a moment in that extended mountain posture and sense the difference between the two sides of your body. So hopefully you feel longer on the left side. Listen to your breath. Relax the jaw if it clenched up. And as you exhale, bring your left hand to your left thigh, like you have a gun in your holster. Fingers forward, elbow back, and move your hips over to the right, feeling that when you do, that both arches stay lifted and your hips stay squared forward. And you're creating a stretch through the right waist and ribs. So all these muscles between the ribs and then below the ribs or at the very base of the ribs under the lungs, the diaphragm muscle, it's like any other muscles. Our breathing muscles get tight if we don't use them. So part of this is learning to take bigger breaths. And part of it is physically stretching those breathing muscles out. So using this half moon posture, like a crescent moon, to open the muscles between the ribs. Feel how your diaphragm, as you take a big breath in, creates more space. It curves out through the right side. So when you find your curve that you can breathe into, and you can support that with your core so you're not sinking into your low back, then lift your left hand. Add it to your right. Interlace your fingers and draw your right arm a little bit longer, feeling how that intensifies the stretch on the upper ribs and shoulder. Lift your head towards your hands. If you're collapsing, instead of a flower arching out towards the sun, if you feel you're dying down to the ground, come back. Find the place that feels graceful and breathable. And then use your next inhale to come back up from your feet, through your legs, your core, back to center. Release your shoulders down, let your arms open out to the sides, and come back down slowly, letting your arms come back down slowly to rest alongside your thighs. Taking your time to release your arms and notice any sensations. Let your toes release. Keep the breath flowing. If you're not already towards the back middle of the mat, shift yourself back so you have room for the next few postures. This next one is a great practice against a wall if you have an open wall to work with. Once you've reset, let your knees bend, checking when you look down, if you had to move your feet, that your knees are right over the middle of your toes, so you can see your big toes inside your kneecaps. Keep that bend in your knees so that we can focus on the spine by releasing the hamstrings. If you're not against a real wall, imagine that your back is against a wall. So from your butt through to your back ribs, in the upper back, shoulder blades and head, you're up against that imaginary wall, or a real one if you have one. Initially, the low back is going to be slightly away from the wall, just like the neck is. Those are the natural curves of those parts of your spine. Letting your shoulders open back, your arms hang heavy. Now let your head release away from the wall so your chin drops forward towards your chest, towards your collarbones. Notice if your shoulders want to follow. For the moment, keep your shoulders pressed back, keeping a little bit of lift through your belly so your low back is supported. Reconnect to that ocean-sounding breath. Imagine your head is like a heavy weight on the end of a line, and breath by breath, allow your head and the weight of your head to release your spine away from the wall, from the top, from the neck downwards. So as you exhale and you release your head, let your shoulders peel away from the wall, and the vertebrae between your shoulders. Let them peel away. And as you're doing that, notice if the low back wants to peel away as well. So keep a little lift through your belly. Let your arms now get heavy. Now that your shoulders have peeled away from the wall, just let them hang down. This is called ragdoll. So if you think of your upper body, the weight of your upper body creating its own stretch through your upper back. As you keep your stability in the lower body, a little bend in the knees, a little support through the core, through the belly. breath by breath, peeling your spine away from the wall, from the top down, taking your time with this until you get to the point where all that's left against the wall is your butt. And it might be when you get to that point that your hands are touching the ground. So if you want to stay in the intensity of the stretch, you can hold opposite elbows so your upper body hangs fully. Taking your time, so there's no rush with this at all. When you do get to the point when it's just your butt against the wall, walk your butt cheeks up the wall so that instead of the top side of your butt against the wall, you have the underside of your butt against the wall. The sits bones that you sit on, the bottom of your pelvis. So hopefully what's highest now is your pelvis, your sacrum, and then the rest of your spine is hanging from there. Either letting your arms hang or holding opposite elbows if you want to stay with a deep pull of gravity. Letting go of the weight of your head, keeping a bend in your knees. So this is about the spine, not about the hamstrings. This next time that you exhale, release your arms and bring yourself down onto your shins into extended child pose where we started. So pressing your hips back over your heels by pushing the ground away with your hands. And as you find where this feels comfortable for you, maybe taking your knees out wider, you might find your shoulders creep up around your neck. So as you push the ground away with your hands, walk your hands back a little closer to you and let your shoulders slide back away from your neck. You can then rest your hands under your head or back by your feet, or keep them long in front if that feels good. And what you can take with you from this practice today is that awareness of your breath. Noticing whether it's even, noticing when you don't notice it, when you realize you're holding your breath, how it feels then to breathe again, and to practice that ocean sound. So until we meet again on the mat, practice finding that ocean sound in the throat. Notice how that feels, how that might change your energy. And then using your next inhale to uncurl, to come up to kneeling. So bringing your upper body up, letting your head come up last. And as you're coming up, bring your arms out to the sides, up overhead. As you exhale, draw them down along your midline. Acknowledging yourself for showing up on the mat, for being present with yourself. Giving yourself a namaste. If you're practicing with anyone else, or you want to give me a namaste, acknowledging the light. Namaste.